10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 224. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 224 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Hope you all are doing well out there and hope you're ready to continue our journey on the melodic minor scale. Today is going to be somewhat of a review of a topic that we've covered in the past, but I'm also going to try to give you some new ideas over this. And we're going to cover the third and most common use of the melodic minor scale in everyday playing. So before we jump into the episode, just a reminder, you can grab this PDF and every other PDF that we've ever made for all 224 episodes at our Patreon site. And you can find that by going to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, clicking on one of the Patreon banners, getting signed up. It only costs you $3 a month, and that really keeps the podcast going and keeps them coming at you week after week in high quality. So if you want to do that, again, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, get your $3 a month ready to go, and you'll get instant access to everything that we've put out. All right, let's jump into today's episode. So just a quick recap about what we've talked about so far this month. We started by talking about how to use the melodic minor scale over a regular minor chord or a minor major chord, minor 7 or minor 6 chord. And then we talked about how to use the sixth mode of the melodic minor scale over a minor 7 flat 5 chord. And this week, finally, we're going to be talking about altered. And like I said, this is something that we have covered in the past, but it just fits perfectly in this series that we're doing on the melodic minor scale because it is the third and most common place that we want to use a mode of the melodic minor scale. So let's refresh our memory on how we actually play altered and how the melodic minor scale actually comes into play here. So in this case, we're going to be using the seventh mode of the melodic minor scale. So what I've used as an example on this week's PDF is if we were to see a G7 alt chord, what we would use is we would use the A flat melodic minor scale, but we would simply start it on G. So that is where we're using the seventh mode of that A flat melodic minor scale, but we're starting it on G and we're using it over a G altered chord, right? Now this results in all the notes that we want, all of the altered notes. We get the flat 9, the sharp 9, the sharp 11, we get the sharp 5 or flat 13, however you want to think about it. And those notes are really what connotates an altered chord. That's what we say when we say altered. It means that we're altering those tones. So if I were to play an A flat melodic minor scale, just to get that sound into your head. There's our A flat melodic minor. Now if we were to start that same scale on G, that's where we get our G alt scale. So if I were to put that over a G7 chord, I'm just going to play a shell voicing 1, 3, and 7, and check out what this scale sounds like over that G7. So there you have it. That's the sound that I want you to get used to. It is pretty dissonant. There's a lot of stuff going on in that creates a lot of tension. And after all, that's kind of the point of playing that altered sound, is to add a ton of tension to our lines. So hopefully that's clear. I know that's a bit of a review. Hopefully you understand the way that that works. That's seventh mode. You should be getting pretty used to this melodic minor scale and be able to move around it at this point in the month, now that we've been talking about it for 3 episodes episodes in a row. So let me know if you have any questions on that. Now, here's the thing that we're going to do this week that I think is kind of fun and interesting and a good way to use that altered sound. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be dealing with two triads, and the way that these two triads play off of each other, I think is really fun, and it's an exciting sound, and it's actually pretty easily accessible. All right, so if we're playing over a G altered chord, we're going to use a G augmented triad, and that fits perfectly into our altered scale. That's going to give us 1, 3, sharp 5. And you'll notice that those notes fit perfectly into our altered scale, right? They're all in there. They're all in that A flat melodic minor scale. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take an A flat minor triad, and we're going to use that as our second triad. And what you'll notice is that it really only changes one note, right? So here's our G augmented triad. Now, if we simply just take the root and we move it up a half step, we get an A flat minor triad. So here's what I really like to do. I like to use those two triads and play them off of each other by segregating them to one measure. So if you look at the two examples at the bottom of the PDF, you're going to notice that I've written a couple of 2-measure altered lines that ultimately resolve to the 1 chord. So it's going to be 2 measures of a G7 altered line, and that's going to resolve to a C major 7 chord. All right, so it's kind of like an altered 2-5-1 where we're just thinking about the 5 chord over the entire 2-5-1, which is something that we've talked about a little bit in the past. All right, so what you'll notice is that in the first measure of the G7 alt, I'm using just strictly and purely that G7 augmented triad. And then in the second measure of the altered line, I'm concentrating exclusively on the A flat minor triad. So what is this doing? Well, it's playing 1 off of flat 9, because in the first measure, I'm using a G natural, and in the second measure, I'm using an A flat, which is the flat 9 of the G7 chord. So what I'm in essence doing is I'm ramping up the tension for the second measure right before I release it when we hit that C major 7 chord. And I love doing this. You guys know that I love building that tension, and the best place to use more and more tension and get it built up is right before we resolve it. So that's why I'm structuring it this way, not the other way around. I'd rather use less tension followed by more tension followed by a release than the other way around. So let's check out these lines that I've written. There's 2 examples, and then I want you to go and write some of your own examples to explore this sound a little bit. But notice that I am only using the triad. I'm not stepping outside of that, and that's for 2 reasons. One is for clarity, because a triad is just such a clear device. And the second one is just not to make it too confusing. I want you to just be able to use this without mixing in other notes and making it more complicated than it actually needs to be. So just stick with those 2 pure triads. All right, let's check out example number 1. So there you go. There's the first example of those 2 triads playing off of each other. And I really like the sound where it's, a harmonic device, and then you slightly change that harmonic device. In this case, you change it by 1 note. So it's very reminiscent of the one that you just played, but there's a slight variation in it. I just really like that sound. I don't know if you do, but that's one of the things that really makes me excited to use this particular harmonic device. All right, let's look at the second one. So it's the exact same idea, except it's just a little bit of a different way of using it, a different line. So here's example number 2, line number 2 off of your PDF. Okay, so there you have it. There's both examples. I'm going to put those in all the different keys for the different instruments, and you'll have those on Patreon. Now, the cool thing about this is you might say, well, there's not really a lot of possibilities, but if you actually sat down with this, you would realize that the possibilities are pretty endless. With the way that these two triads play off of each other. So don't just take it as surface. Really work on this. Really try to discover some of those possibilities that are going to result in just very, very cool sounds. It's like any other concept. The longer you spend on it, the more creative you get with it. And the more that these sounds can actually appear in your playing when you're improvising. So really think about this. If you enjoy this sound, really just start to practice it. It's actually a pretty simple concept if you think about it. And a really easy way to start playing over a chord that could be pretty intimidating to some people. So a lot of people see alt, they don't know what to do, but this would be a great way to at least start. And then you could start to make some of your own discoveries about the altered sound. Okay, let me know if you have any questions in the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group. Hopefully, again, these are pretty complicated subjects, so hopefully I've done an okay job of explaining everything. So make sure that you go and grab the PDF from our Patreon, 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners, $3 a month, and you get access to over 220 PDFs over there. All right, everybody, hope you have a great week, and we will see you next time with our Tune of the Month episode. Stay safe and healthy out there. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.